Almost live on Quimby's YouTube channel. Getting ready for this event, redirecting to YouTube. Yeah. All right. Welcome, everybody, to a Quimby's Bookstore virtual event on YouTube. We are so excited to have all of you join us tonight. My name is Liz. I work here at Quimby's. I'm so glad you're able to join us for Jim Terry talking about Come Home Indio with Elliott. Before we get into the event, we're going to just do a couple announcements for housekeeping. One is we are open to the public Thursday through Monday, noon to 6 p.m. You can always order stuff from quimbys.com. Also, while supplies last, you can, if you spend $80, you get this Johnny Sampson 5x7 print with his take on Chris Ware's iconic Quimby the Mouse reading a Nick Jornasso book. So you got to spend $80, and then you get that. You can either spend it in the store or at quimbys.com. We also have another event coming up on Tuesday. Tuesday, November 17th. Zine Club Chicago is meeting online. The theme is all together now, so bring zines about or made by collaborators and various individuals working together to make a zine or a mini comic, or just meet up if you want to get into zines, you want to learn more about zines. That's going to meet on Zoom, so you need to RSVP to zineclubchicago@gmail.com. And more information about that at quimbys.com on our events page. And then don't forget, we always have our new stuff Saturdays live stream at 11:30 a.m. Central on our Instagram channel at Quimby's Bookstore. All right, so about this book, Come Home Indio by Jim Terry, published by Street Noise Press. It is a graphic memoir. Jim talks about growing up between two cultures, born Irish and Native American. He juxtaposes growing up in the mostly white suburban world with the tug of his native roots in Wisconsin. Along the bumpy road, he fumbles with loneliness, cultural confusion, and a healthy dose of alcoholism until he ends up at the Standing Rock conflict in North Dakota, where he begins to see things anew. Now, this book is available at Quimby's Bookstore here at our brick-and-mortar store at 1854 West North Avenue here in Chicago, or at our website, quimbys.com. But if you buy the book from us, you get one of these book plates that Jim made. They're each one is different, so they're signed and drawn, and they are awesome. So we have those. The work of Jim Terry has been featured in such places as Sundowners, Vampirella, Heavy Metal, Alice Cooper versus Chaos, Creepshow, and more. And this is his first work as a writer and illustrator. So to see more about him, see woundedbutdangerous.com. And Jim will be in conversation with Elliott, the co-owner of Chicago's own Sideshow Gallery, one of the coolest stores in town at 2219 Northwestern Avenue, right down the street. Anna is an artist, teacher, tarot reader, and lover of all things strange and exotic. For more info, see Sideshow Gallery, Chicago.com. We are going to do a Q&A after, at the end of the event. So post your questions in the YouTube scrolling chat now, and we will try to filter those over to Jim and Anna. All right, so without further ado, I am going to hand the stage over to Jim and Anna.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Anna. Hi, everybody. Hello.
Well, I'm going to leave it to you to kick it off. What do you say? You want to start with your reading, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, okay. I brought the book with me. All these books behind me are fake. It's just all paper. But no, I brought the book, and I figured I would read. The book is mostly a graphic novel. It is almost entirely illustrated. There are a couple prose sections from it, and I thought I would read from a couple of those sections briefly. So this takes place toward the end of the book, and I have heard the rumblings of what was going on at Standing Rock. but I didn't feel qualified to participate because, that's just, if you read the book, you'll understand why. But I decided to go anyways. So this is when I'm deciding to leave, to go. I packed a few things and headed to the Dells. Elena was getting donations together and everyone wanted to help. All the nations were coming together. Comanches were driving firewood up there. Dene and Mohawk and Algonquin and others I'd only read about journeying. It wasn't just natives either. Anyone who cared about the planet or what kind of world we were leaving for the next generation was welcome. Why not this urban native, this half-breed who never felt he belonged anywhere or with any group? There was nobody left to define me. Home was no longer where it had always been. They bulldozed Pop's house, and the Dells no longer meant Mom. I began the journey upset and lonely. It didn't matter. Soon I'd be off with my sister and cousin doing something. I was no brave warrior. My self-preservation instincts kept me from heroics, but I hoped to help in some way, maybe even learn a little, maybe, if they'd have me. Jump ahead just a little bit here. What worried me more was that, unlike me, these were real Indians, natives who were taking a stand against something older than the country itself, greed, to protect a resource as old as life, water. Would they spot me as a fraud immediately? Would they know that, although my intentions were true, I was not qualified to stand alongside them? The lifelong feeling of exclusion, a genetically induced imposter syndrome, rattled at the back of my mind and in the base of my gut. I tucked it deep down and we rolled out of the Dells. Jump ahead just a hair. Eventually we began to, this is after we've driven through South Dakota and seen all kinds of spooky stuff on the road, including, black Humvees and things piled on the side of the road that shouldn't be there. Eventually we began to see lights. I'd never felt like more of a tourist as we drove through the res. The dark sleeping homes of those who dealt with this hostility and oppression every day. I bristled at the idea of any modern non-native being relocated against their will and told, this is where you live now. There were a few different camps and we ended up at the largest one, Ochedi. Someone manning the gate stepped up and asked if we were carrying any drugs, alcohol, or weapons. We said no. Here, I thought, was where I'd be exposed. You can't come in here, faker. You're barely native. Thanks for your cheap idealism, but you haven't earned the right to be here. He looked in the Jeep. This your first time at the camp? We told him it was, and he smiled and said, welcome home.
Yay.
That was just a little part of this book.
I just want to say I love this book. I've read it about 4 times. Every time I go back in, I find something that I missed before, and I'm sure there's plenty of things that I'm still missing. One thing that I just remembered when you were reading that was when you did say that there were things by the side of the road that had been confiscated and like urinated on. What was there? I mean, what they literally like pulled people over and took personal belongings and defiled them. I mean,
well, there was a lot going on there that we weren't told about, and again, I don't really feel super qualified to talk about it all because, as I said in the book, and as I say any chance I get, I was barely there. I was there for a week maybe, and but I did keep my ears open and my eyes open, and I listened to what people were telling, and I shared what I thought wasn't a lie. I didn't want to be propagandic in any way, but I also wanted to express how I was feeling, how I felt about it all. And I did hear things about that, sacred objects being taken during raids and bundled together and, defiled in every possible way and left on the side of the road, broken and destroyed, and it was, it was a symbolic gesture, obviously, and so there's a lot of real ugly stuff going on. But what I experienced there was a heroic response to that, one that I had never seen before, or maybe read about, but never seen in my lifetime until I was there. Never seen anybody actually practicing it. And it left a hell of an impression on me.
Yeah, I particularly love when you describe sitting around the fire and you say, they're talking about infiltrators and then I think even at one point there's a sniper or, and the response, you're sitting there going, oh, okay, like, how do we deal with this? Let me know. And then it's love, it's like wave to him, include these people in your discussion, and that was such a moving part for me because I would have been really conspiratorial, like, oh, wow, wait, there's spies here. Like, what are we going to do to them? And
Yeah.
they just shut it right down and like, no,
What are we
that's
going
not
to do? Well, talk to them.
Yeah.
Talk to them, tell them that we're doing this for their kids too. It was mind blowing to me because, like you said, I was trained by the culture of fear to, react in some sort of obvious way. And that response was not what I was expecting, and it floored me.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, and then also just like going into the town and having that just in the diner, and then the waiter and the, and kind of just having this, the whole thing with the Trump being elected while you're up there. I mean, and then it's just there's so many like ironic threads there, oh God. But yeah.
Let's not dwell on it too much though.
What's that?
Let's not dwell on that too much.
Right, exactly. No politics. I guess. No. So I have an artistic question for you about this section. You shift stylistically, right? You go from a graphic novel format, and then you go into a more, straightforward writing format, and the illustration changes. So what was your thought there?
Well, I'll tell you how the project came to be initially. Was I was at the Indigenous Con in Albuquerque, and Liz, the publisher of Street Noise, approached me and asked if I was interested in telling my story, because I think that she had seen that I was at Standing Rock for a short period of time. And she asked if I wanted to talk about that experience. And as I always say, I didn't really feel qualified, and I certainly didn't want to be an ambassador of that entire thing. So I said I guess I could talk about what it meant to me, that period of time being there, but that wouldn't mean anything to anybody unless they knew what came before it. And just those two words, welcome home, and what that meant to me, especially after so much doubt and, as I said, imposter syndrome, and then showing up there and being immediately welcomed. So I didn't think that would mean anything to anybody if they didn't know what was happening. So I said, well, okay, I guess I should write about me a little bit. And then, well, I can't write about me unless I talk about my parents, because if I just talk about me, it's just this big mess just dropped in somebody's lap. We need to see the genesis of this a little bit. So I just started talking about my parents. And then once I started unlocking those doors in my mind, I really wanted to talk about my parents, especially since they're gone. And it became a way for me to connect with them to a degree, in as much as I was writing about them. And as an adult, as a person who has been through the ringer and come out the other end a little bit with a slightly different perspective, I could put myself in a different place other than as, the angry son or, the hurt son. And maybe as I'm telling this story, try and think what they might have been going through, or what different perspectives of how they might have seen things that I would have been blind to because I was just too young and confused and angry all the time, you know. So once that began, it just started. I just did page after page, and I didn't know where the thread was. I didn't know what the thread was going to be until I was, you know, 3/4 of the way through, and I'm like, man, I feel like an outsider a lot in this book. And I guess that's the thread. Yeah. So.
Well, that was something that I really related to. I really liked how, you know, it's like you're searching for your place, you know, and I really related to that. I mean, I related to so many things in here, but I mean, that was one of the main threads, you know, this sort of like outsider trying to find their way in. And your honesty, it's really commendable. And I think that's what really makes this book resonate so much. What were you really trying to communicate with it? I mean, I think you kind of just answered that in a little bit. Do you feel like you accomplished what you were trying to communicate?
I don't even know what I was trying to communicate, or if I was. I think mostly in the immediate process of creating it, page by page, I was trying to communicate as much emotion as possible. You know, so whatever I was feeling, if it was elation, if it was solitude, if it was blinding rage, I was just trying to communicate that on a page by page basis, whatever was true to what was happening at that time. And but I think honestly, and you know, I did this. My first professional job in comics was The Crow, and it was skinning the wolves. And James O'Barr, who created The Crow, there's an awesome. He actually is in the book, and he's a great friend of mine now. And but as we were working on The Crow, I had this other subplot that I tried to bring into it, and I was like, yeah, and then they rise up and they start fighting. They start fighting back, and he's like, no, none of that sentimental shit. And I was like, sentimental? I don't know. And the truth is, I'm hyper sentimental. I'm a very sentimental person. And it just resonates with me. There's a scene in here where I talk about Sam Fuller. Well, a coworker of mine talks to me about Sam Fuller. And the truth is, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Sam Fuller's movies, but they wear their hearts completely on their sleeves. And when I watch them, I'm bawling, you know, and it's just moody, it's crazy, and then, you know, thrilling, and then just bonkers sad. And that's kind of how my brain works. And so back to the question, I was trying to be hopeful more than anything else. I was really trying to be hopeful, and in a way that wasn't, you know, rah rah or anything like that, but more in the spirit of endurance, and what that can, the hope, that the kind of meaningful and lasting hope that enduring something can give to somebody, and what it gave to me.
I think you accomplished it. Particularly, I feel like, you know, you're the way that you represented your family, and you guys all sort of have this like art as your lifeboat, kind of, you know, your father, the musician, your mother's love of literature, your sort of like way out with drawing, and that's your way of communicating and kind of finding your place. I don't know. I sort of feel like as an artist, it just made so much sense to me, you know, like there's this kind of also concurrently like this theme of survival and, you know, kind of making it through, and, you know, art as your vehicle for that, you know, that was really hopeful, as you said. Like I really took that away from the book, you know.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that it doesn't have to be art. It's just a passion for anything.
Right.
You know, and my mom's passion for reading, and sadly mostly garbage, but she always was reading. And my dad lived for his music. My sister is an incredible a culinary person. What do you call a chef? Chef. And she's doing great things with indigenous food right now, and it's just the different passions that we can look to, and they are external, but they're interwoven with everything, right?
Yeah, it's like therapy, it's your connection. Yeah, so you were saying that this kind of came sort of organically. Was it linear? Did you go back and forth? Like, did you play around, because in a way there's sort of this like noir aspect to it. I don't know if I'm just reading into it, but I kind of got this like sort of, I think there's like chunks, and it could have happened before, after, I don't know, revelations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hope it wasn't too confusing, because for most of it, it just happened one page after the other. And there were pages that I, left out that weren't necessary, and or that my editor decided weren't necessary. But I noticed when I reread it, when I got the book, that there are moments where I will be talking about my childhood, and then suddenly there's 8-year-old Jim dealing with something, and then suddenly there's 15-year-old Jim having a conversation with his dad, and hopefully like the Rush T-shirt lets you know that he's 15 now.
Yeah.
But and the Zets and everything, but for the most part, it just happened as it happened, and I remembered, oh yeah, okay, that happened because of this. There are some things that might be muddy in my mind, but I just left them as they were. They might not be the exact year or whatever,
I love the part about Frazetta and your mom yelling at the teacher. I mean, that is just classic. And I feel like it really gives you, like an idea of what her personality was like. It's so awesome. Like, what kind of idiot doesn't know who Frank Frazetta, what kind of art teacher doesn't know who that is? Like, it's so good. It's so good. That's one of my favorite parts. But I also love that you have a sense of humor about things too, like the whole Mount Rushmore thing. I mean, on many levels, but and I'm sure there's so many like in jokes that I didn't even get, because I'm not a comic book person, so I'm sure it just like went right over my head.
Oh, there are tons that went right over your head.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Oh wait, can I tell you some of my favorite parts? Since I have a list.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay. I love the horse. I love the part where the horse calls you out. I know we talked about this before, but I mean, that is such a beautiful part of the book. And I knowing you as I do, I can totally picture you in that moment, the horse calling you out.
Yeah. I wish I was able to get close to how beautiful that whole thing actually was. As this is just like everything, it's a truncated version, but I mean, the air, the way the air smelled, I can still remember it, how cold it was. It wasn't freezing cold. It was just perfectly cold,
Really crisp and clear. Yeah. Okay. I said the Frazetta, the Mount Rushmore. Well, I don't want to get into politics. Oh, I know. Making you read books is punishment. I thought that was hysterical. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't funny at the time, but but you said that she didn't read, she read trash. What did they make you read?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those weird things. Yeah, it's not all trash. I shouldn't say that. That's harsh. But she read mostly escapist stuff, which I do too. As there's all kinds of fun garbage on my bookshelves here. But my stepdad was the heavy literature guy, and I don't think I put that together until I was.
Oh, okay. I see.
So I would be telling her, hey, I read Thomas Wolfe. And she'd be like, oh, okay. And then back to Dean Koontz, you know. And, but they made me read, the first book was Lord of the Flies. And I was too young. You know, I was too young. I didn't even know what a conch was. I was angry the whole time I read it. I didn't look anything up. I just read it angrily. And then it was Ken Kesey, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And that wasn't for me. I didn't get what was going on at all. And then it was Flowers for Algernon. And that one, because he starts out, you know, with what might be considered a mental deficiency, and it's written in a very childish way in the beginning. And I understood it because I was a kid. And then he starts getting smarter and smarter as these experiments go on and his vocabulary expands. And I felt like I was there with him. You know, I felt like I was learning with him and becoming smarter. And if you've read the book, you know how it ends, and it's tragic. And suddenly I was like, I want to read. And so they gave me a library card, and I was like, okay, what am I supposed to read now? And they're like, well, anything. Just go ahead. And all of a sudden, it was like the multiverse opened up in front of me. And I picked out Cujo by Stephen King because it had a scary cover. It is drooling fangs coming out of this mist. And I learned words in that book that I shouldn't have learned at that young, but it will always be cherished by me.
This is kind of a cheesy question, but what's your favorite part of the book? What do you think came out just right?
Yeah. I think when I was rereading it, the part that gave me the most joy may have been the recovery scenes, because that's relatively fresh, you know, and it was a time that I didn't have to dance around anything. I could just be honest with what was going on, and it was a very simple yet weirdly complicated time. You know, like my one priority was to stay sober day by day. That was the one job that I had, and the simplicity of that in the early times was, and the friendships I made, you know, and continue to make were a good place for me to visit. And I felt a little trepidatious talking about it because there's, you know, a lot of, again, just like with the Standing Rock thing, there's a lot of things that I respect that I don't want to infringe on with all that. But I feel like I hopefully did it justice without being, an ambassador or representative for whatever, you know, just telling my story. But yeah, the jokes and the sardonic humor and everybody's, you know, gallows humor is something that I love, and it cracks me up. You know, the guy saying, "Yeah, it's great. We destroyed our lives so we could remember how great milkshakes are. I'm so happy about that." You know, very fresh in my mind and very fun for me to think about.
Yeah, we really haven't touched on the recovery aspect of it, and that's sort of the major thread. I wanted to show you one of my favorite illustrations, and it's such a heavy illustration. And I got this idea from Liz because she was saying like, oh, you know, you can just say, take a look at this picture. I really like it. And this one of you see it? Yeah, that's such a heavy picture. But I think it's such a the whole section is so powerful. The way that you've drawn it with so much black, and it's kind of like you're always like falling in those pictures and sort of in this kind of vacuum. I think it's really, really powerful, and they're beautifully drawn. Yeah, I mean, did that just sort of come out, or had you sort of played around with that before? I feel like it's very, when I think of graphic novels, I think of illustrations like that, but it's just sort of interesting how well it plays for this heavy subject matter. I don't know. Is that coming out right? I'm not sure if I'm.
I think I understand what you're saying there. I think, yeah, it's the influence of all my heroes. That's all it is. I study and I learn from people who are better than me and who have been doing it for longer and who did it better a long time ago. And, if I hadn't read Will Eisner, this book wouldn't exist, nor would any of the storytelling sensationalism that I employ, because it is comics. It's comics, and it's something that can only be done in comics, or at least that's what I was trying for. There's the old argument of what medium you can do this and this, you can do that and that, and comics is a weird blend of certain things, and there are imagery can be such a tool, and to me, the image comes first for comics. When I'm working on graphic storytelling, the image comes first. The idea is there, but it forms into an image first, and then I put whatever dialogue or thoughts are on top of it, and those are meant to enrich or to give an ironic bend to or something, to tweak the art. But the art is the first thing for me. And honestly, it wasn't hard for me to summon a lot of those images because it was just drawing the way I felt. And if you've ever been having withdrawals and you're on a bed, it feels like nothing else exists except you and that bed, and it is a void of nothingness, and you are the tiniest spot in that. You're a smear on that. That's how I felt. And so it wasn't hard to put that in an almost literal interpretation, which is what a lot of those were, and sinking into the bed and coming out the other end of it. And it's just representations of what I couldn't put into words, and I can't even put the feelings into illustrations. This is an approximation.
Well, they're heavy, and it came through, and it really resonated, and they're powerful, and they are amazing. So, one other kind of thing I was curious about was the dedication and the title. I mean, I think I know, but I'm just wanting to know, I guess.
Well, the title Indio was a name that my dad called me, because he, despite being a Irish jazz musician, he also spoke fluent Spanish, so he loved Puerto Rico. He loved salsa, the music. He loved playing salsa. And, when we were living in LA, he learned how to speak like a street Spanish, and he would use it. And it was a term of endearment. When things were going okay, he would call me Indio. He wouldn't ever, I don't think I ever heard him say, Indio, you're an idiot. It was always like, hey, Indio, check this out, man. So it was always like a good time when I heard that, and of course, the idea of coming home, I don't know where that is. I don't know where my home is. I don't know where I fit in. I still don't, but the idea is that that's okay. That's okay that I don't know. That's okay that I don't always feel like I fit in. I go into a room full of people, and I guarantee I will be quiet until I can completely assess the situation, and then you won't be able to shut me up. But, until I know what's going on, I just don't feel at home anywhere until, I do. So yeah, that's kind of the idea of the title. We tossed around a couple, and this was the only one that really felt like it was vague enough for me. Everything else seemed really specific, too on the nose maybe, but this kind of gave the feeling that I was going for, like it could mean a lot of things. That's what it meant to me. And the dedication is to those who are still here. You know, it's natives. It's natives. We are still here. You know, there's a lot of people that don't realize that we still exist, that we are a vital source. That, I mean, a lot of them realize that now, not to get political, but
Look out.
But you know, natives exist. We exist. We exist in this world, and we exist in many ways. You know, I can't tell you, you know, and it's in the book what I dealt with growing up in a white suburb, and what being native meant then, you know. And then Dances with Wolves came out, and suddenly people were fascinated with natives, but you know, still like weirdly insensitive, you know. So yeah, it's that, but it's also anybody who's survived something, you know. And certainly it's about recovery, and it's about finding identity, and it is all that stuff. I'm distracted suddenly. There's a chat thing.
I think it's a good question because
Oh,
since
yeah.
I'm not a comic book person, I'm sure people are like,
Yeah, should we just do you want to read it?
it's not
Right.
popping up on my screen. What?
Okay, I'll read it. It. Joe asks, can you tell us more about what drew you to Will Eisner? Yeah, I love to. He's my hero. I discovered him after I got sober. I was in a comic shop, and at the time, everything seemed to be photorealistic superheroes, and I was more of a cartoonist. And I took a chance. I spent more money than I could afford to buy his book, New York, which is right about here. I bought New York, Life in the Big City, and it was a collection of stories that, you know, like with the O. Henry style, which were just about people. There were no superheroes. It was just tragic and hilarious, and you know, comic stories about people living in the city and how they existed, and all the weird things that, you know, entire pages devoted to the smells of a city street, you know, things like that. And there were some stories in there that hit me so hard that I get choked up thinking about them now. And again, it was also early sobriety. So at the time I was about as open as a raw nerve. So reading these things hit me in a profound way. And I had kind of, I was worried, and, you know, I'll talk about this a little bit, but, you know, when I got sober, I was worried that I would lose any kind of inspiration that I had when I was drinking, because, you know, when I was drinking, I thought I was a genius all the time. I really thought I was really something special. And then I'd look at what I had done the next day, and of course it was trash. And so I was worried when I got sober that spark would be gone, that inspiration would be gone. And it was reading Will Eisner that, and seeing his cartooning more than anything, you know, the way he told a story, an entire story told with one panel, you know, an entire story told with no words, just images that break your heart. And all of a sudden I realized that there were so many possibilities, you know, and that you could tell a story that could pierce someone's heart, which that book did to me. And I didn't think I was capable of doing that, but I saw that this guy had done it, and it inspired me. And so I bought a brush, and I started trying to draw with a brush instead of a pen, you know, and it was really a tremendous time of growth for me. And I really owe that to him, and that book in particular. I've devoured everything that he put out since then, but that will always be the high note for me, that book. Hopefully that explains it a little.
I can't wait to read it. We have another Black Cat 2086 asks, through the writing of this book, did you find yourself making connections between events in your life that you were unaware of until that point? Rather, bring a bigger picture into view.
Geez, I don't know. Probably. I can't think of anything specific though. I think there were a couple moments, especially concerning my parents, where suddenly a bell went off and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course she would never get over that. And of course she would call me when I was in my 30s and still want to talk about that. And so suddenly things like that, it's in the book, but I had an older brother who passed away of leukemia when he was 9 and I was 6. And I think that kind of was that never was gone. That was never healed. And I think I used to be resentful of that when I was drinking, when I was out there. But doing it in the book and drawing it and thinking about my mom, of course, I look at it in a different way and a less selfish way, hopefully, and see it from her perspective. So in that way, that event was transformed in the writing of this. So
There's so much love there, though. I feel like, you can just feel it when you talk about and you draw like the drawings of like your father playing and, your mother singing. I don't know. I feel like you can definitely feel the love and like the sort of, you're working it out, and coming through the other end. And I don't know, I really related to that with my parents. I felt like there were so many things about like forgiving, and kind of how you sort of came to terms with your dad at the end, and your mom was so sick, and I don't know, there's just something there again, like very hopeful and beautiful about it,
Yeah, well, nobody lasts forever, and hopefully we can say goodbye to those that we love and with peace in our hearts, and I was very, very lucky that I got my stuff together in time that I could do that with them before they left, because this book wouldn't, I could have done it if they were still here, no way would I have. But the fact that them passing is a little while now, I can look at it with just a little different pair of glasses and see. I don't know. I don't want to. Let's figure something else out here. Is there a question here that I see?
Is there one I'm missing? I don't see it coming up on my thing. Let's see.
I'm just going to jump in right now, just to let you guys know that you had some really nice comments in the YouTube chat from folks named Hillary Barda, Amy Robillard, and Dave Pisciuto. Sorry if I mutilated everyone's names. But Hillary Barda asks about the influence of Jack Davis and John Severin.
Oh, yeah. Well, Hillary is a friend of mine, and he knows me well, and he knows that those are heroes of mine. And I will say, Jack Davis, this is what I love to talk about. I have to watch myself because I'll go on forever about these guys. But Jack Davis is a cartoonist, and he worked with EC Comics, as did John Severin. But they're both superb draftsmen, and they both are hard workers. They both were hard workers. And I think that discovering those old guys, when I got sober, and Will Eisner and these guys who had like a iron horse work ethic was incredibly important to me, because no longer could I rely on, the explosion of inspiration that comes after the third beer, or a shot of whiskey. All of a sudden it was like, oh, it's 6 a.m. I'm awake. What do I do? Oh yeah, I draw, and you sit down and you start working. And then, you get your coffee and you start working. And guys like that never turned in garbage. Some of it may not have been as spectacular as other work, but they never dialed in a thing. and especially those two guys, just consummate pros, and what people look up to when you're trying to reforge a new work ethic, and seeing people that invested hard work like that was an incredible boon to me. And these are the things that I connected with James O'Barr. When we did the Skinning the Wolves book, we talked about Jack Davis and Harvey Kurtzman and the old war comics that they did for EC, and how we wanted to do a Crow comic, but actually do a frontline combat comic. So anyways, getting a little nerdy here.
I have a question that's going to sound really ignorant, and the difference between people who use pen and the people who use a brush. Like, what's the I mean, obviously, I would think that brushwork is harder. Yeah, I mean, is that, or is there just more fluidity?
Yeah, it's different. When I use my work looks different when I use different tools. I just prefer a brush now because I can do more with it than I can with a pen. Or I can do more quicker with it than I can with a pen. I can flatten the brush and get a nice, huge, fat brush stroke on there. Whereas with a pen, I'm just cross-hatching away, which makes it look different, but I enjoy that too. But yeah, and a brush has no pushback. And so you're gliding the brush across a page, and you have to modulate that yourself. If you have a pen or a quill, which I've never mastered, you're going to have a little pushback, and the dynamic is completely different with how you interact with that. And, the paper, it makes a difference as well. So I did an Inktober recently, and for some reason, I always use this really cheap, pulpy paper, just because all of a sudden I can use a brush and do all this dry brush stuff on there. And it's just different than using smooth Bristol, which I do for comic stuff, where you can really control the line, but doing like 10-minute Inktober drawings, you just have some fun and make it real sketchy. But yeah, there's no better one. It's just whichever one you like more and how it looks.
Looks like we have another question. Do you have a particular regimen for working on things or rituals for working?
Who asked that one?
I don't have a name.
Oh, okay.
No name popped up. Oh, I did, Liz. Ah.
Oh, do I have a particular? It's weird right now. Everything's, in the first couple months of this whole quarantine business, I stuck to my regiment like a, just like a prisoner. I was like, yes, I will do this. And it was feed the cats, make the coffee, sit down, start working. I mean, I tried listening to podcasts, but they were too distracting to me. So now I just listen to music, and I put the tunes on, and I listen to records because, how cool am I, right? No, but I listen to records specifically because I have to get up and flip the record. Otherwise, I will sit there. If I play it on my computer, it just goes on random, and I'll be sitting there, 6 hours later and be like, oh my gosh, I should move. But I got to get up and flip the record every 20 minutes or half hour. And I should move around and circulate a little bit. But otherwise, I can't really watch TV when I work. I just have to listen to music. And the more prog rocky or jazzy or Brainiac type music, the better for me.
Here's another one. Matthew Cooper asks, do you prefer working on your own stuff, collaborating, or both?
Boy, I really like the people I collaborate with, but if I could work on my own stuff all the time and get paid for it, that's what I would do for sure. I enjoy working with people, but I usually disagree with something and it sticks in my craw, but I do it anyways because I'm trying to be a pro. And but for the most part, I don't think that I think I like to tell the stories I like to tell the most. You know what I mean? If I'm telling somebody else's story, that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'll do my best to portray it the best that I can. But it's very difficult for me not to inject too much of my own ideas in there things like that. And then, I don't like button heads. So, I just go with the flow as much as possible. But I suppose there are times like last year, Tim Seeley and I did a Crow versus Hack Slash book. And that was just fun. It was just fun to draw. So I was very happy to do that. I was like drawing monsters and everything. And I was like, okay, he's got it down. I'm going to draw it. I don't have to think too much. I just have to make it look nice, which there's something to be said for that too, as well. So I guess both.
Did you have complete control over this book? Did you have complete creative control?
Pretty much. Yeah. I don't think that Liz, the publisher, gave me any backlash on anything. There was, as I state in the afterwards, there was things that I was debating about, and I went to her on particularly a lot of the antiquated slurs and harsh language that is in the book that I felt needed to be in there because it was a truth of what I heard and saw when I was growing up. But for the most part, it was, and she just left it to me, to figure that out for the most part. And but yeah, I didn't have any issues. It was mostly me working in a room by myself and not thinking about anybody reading it. That was the most important thing. I couldn't imagine anybody reading this stuff while I was working on it, because the second I did, I'd freeze up with terror. So it's like, wait, somebody's going to see this, but if I didn't think about that, then I could be as honest as I possibly could.
We have another question. Jonathan Lamontia. Hi, Jonathan. Were there any scenes approached in one tone, angry, humorous, etc., but decided to change after seeing how it came out or for some reason?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I can't think of anything in particular, though. It's I think that tonally, I will say this, upon rereading it, when I got the book, because I kind of put it away and I didn't want to look at it for a while, because I'll tell you, I got so sick and tired of me. At the end of this, in the last leg, I was like, God, I'm so tired of me. Sick of drawing this guy, So I put it away. But when I reread it, I personally found a lot more humor in it than I think a lot of people have found in it. And it might just be because I find particular things hilarious, but I remember some of the first responses from people who had read advanced copies. They're like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that she went through all that. And I was like, I mean, okay, but other people have gone through way worse, and I'm okay, did you think it was funny at all? Because, well, no, not really. I mean, there's you in your underwear sweating booze out in a fatigue half of the book, and that's not funny to you? But I found a lot more
funny parts.
You read it, yeah.
I love when you're in the theater watching Star Wars for like the third time or whatever, and you're like, oh, I get it. She's watching Harrison Ford.
Yeah. It was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And we
went Raiders of the Lost Ark, right.
The Yorktown Theater. And we sat through it twice, and I didn't know you were allowed to do that. And
well, I don't think you are, right? I mean,
not anymore. I think in the old days, maybe you could. But yeah, and I remember that watching that movie with her, and remember when they pry open the tomb and that old air comes out. I remember asking her if that was pure evil. Mom, is that pure evil coming out of that tomb there? No, it's just old air. So it made me think of a lot of the nice moments. Not all of them made it in there.
How does your sister like the book?
I think it was difficult for her. But I would not have published it if she didn't approve it.
That was my follow-up question.
Yeah, no, I sent it to her and she said, okay, yeah, I think it needs to be told. And, and said, okay, I'm going to do it then. And, she's a big part of my life, and I wouldn't have gone for it. The last thing I want in the world is to do something that would alienate the person closest to me.
Liz has another question. What do you think the funniest part of the book is?
It's really not the part that made me laugh out loud that I completely forgot about is when we were in the Heights and I was a kid and we were eating this commodity cheese. The government would send this cheese and half of the brick had turned brown, and we just microwaved it anyways because all we had to eat was that and these chips. And I reference it in the book, and it's well, we got anything to eat? We're watching Nightmare on Elm Street 2 for the 100th time, and they're like, oh yeah, he has the runs anyways, and we always talk about having the runs or whatever, and then the next panel is me riding back to my Konikas, and a little thought bubble over my head, I do have the runs. And I completely forgotten that I put that panel in there. And I was probably laughing when I drew it because I laughed again when I read it. But any kind of humor like that always makes me laugh. I'm, mature like that. But then there's a lot of things, interactions with my friends. It was very important to me to show how huge my friends were when I was growing up and what a life raft they were as well. And most of that was just us laughing at whatever was happening. We could always, I have some very good friends, and they pulled me through by treating me like I wasn't too much of a freak and calling me out when I was acting like a freak. So a lot of humor there. Maybe it's just me though. I made these old movies back in the old days, and I've been rewatching them, and nobody else enjoys them as much as I do. So maybe it's the same thing with the humor. I find it way funnier than anybody else will.
I can totally see you drawing that thought bubble over your head. I can just picture it.
Oh yeah, and laughing.
Well,
okay.
let
Do
me
we
see.
have any other questions or?
Let's see. Is there another one on here? No. Oh, here we go. Oh, do you see that one, Jim? No pressure, but do you want to give a quick tour of your bookshelf?
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
kind of curious too, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, up here, this is all EC Comics collections and the offshoots thereof. There's my Wits End, my Wallywood, my Humbug, and this is all Tales and so forth. There are the Fantagraphics books. This is up my Lord of the Rings Tolkien shelf, complete with figurines. Yes, I'm a grown man, but I don't care. This is all
Action figures.
Yeah. This is all Will Eisner, and underneath here is graphic novels, and these are all art books on the top shelf because they don't fit into these ones. And this is all my American Native history books, and then nonfiction, and this is all fiction.
Do you have that's a good
And
question.
the bench press is right behind the couch
Oh yeah.
while I'm working out and
Where you
squats.
really pump it. Hey, what book on that native bookshelf would you recommend for people to read? If because I think that was a pretty poignant part of your story when you're reading those.
I wish that every American had to read in school or shortly thereafter Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by D. Brown, because that is a book that woke me up. And D. Brown was a white man, but this book was a sea change for me, and it absolutely shocked me into an awareness that I didn't have before, because there's a lot of things that aren't talked about. They certainly aren't talked about in school. They're very rarely talked about in the media. by media, I mean movies and books and popular culture. And they weren't talked about by my parents or people who were raising me, that maybe they didn't know, because there's an entire generation that was lost. This information was lost or kept from by force. My grandmother on my native side was part of the school system, where they would take the kids and put them in these Catholic or Christian schools and re-educate them, so they couldn't speak their language, they couldn't practice their religion, they had to cut their hair and put on civilized clothing, and and the idea was to bleed out any of the heritage or any of the culture. And the old saying, kill the Indian, save the man, comes from that. So yeah, bearing my heart, it wounded me. Went off on a little rant there, sorry.
No, that's perfect. You have some other questions too. Melissa Sue Stanley asks, what's next? Ooh, that's a good question. What is next?
I don't know. I really don't know. I have a fantasy book that I've been working on, because I actually have it completed, and I'm working on a second part. Nobody's read the first part, but I'm working on the second one. So that's probably the thing that I will work on first, aside from whatever paying gigs I get in, and there are a couple of those that are on the horizon. But for the most part, I'm going to try and concentrate on just trying to make some artwork that's as beautiful as I can make it. I want to bring art back into the forefront of comics. Too many writers getting all the credit now. We need an age of artists again.
Susan asks, where are your cats? Hers are walking on the keyboard right now.
Yeah, I've got one right over there, one right there, one over there, and the other one's probably in the bathroom in her little area watching other things. So they are here. I just don't want you to see the mess that the rest of this place is. This is very carefully curated right here.
Oh yeah, same. Let me see if there's.
Well, Anna, I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, okay.
For those who don't know, Anna and I used to work at the art store together. And I refer to the art store days in the book as well, during a particularly malicious time where I did not want to go to the art store to work.
I know, standing on the corner and with that sense of doom to get on the bus. I know exactly how you felt. Exactly. I'm sure there's many people watching this that can relate to that feeling. No, Jim, thank you so much for including. I'm so honored to be able to talk to you about this book. This beautiful book. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop talking about it. It's really, really fantastic. And I haven't really felt this way about a book in a really long time. And it really, really resonated with me. And I think it's beautifully drawn, and I don't know, it's at my favorite bookstore, Quimby's, and my favorite people are involved. I don't know. I'm just so honored to be able to talk to you about it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Anna. And I also want to thank Quimby's for doing this and for carrying the book and for keeping my books on consignment in the old days for years while one issue sat there and nobody bought. And I thank them for that. And if I can just be serious for a second, I am really grateful to anybody who has picked up the book or is thinking about reading it, because I don't think I'll ever do anything like this again. I don't think I have it in me. And it was necessary. It started out as, just something that I thought would be maybe helpful to somebody else. And that is the only reason that I agreed to do it, because I know that people have been through stuff that I've been through, and I got through it, and I just want other people to know that they can too. And so that's how I started the book, but it ended up helping me more than I expected it to. And so hopefully if you do pick it up, I'd love to hear what you think of it. So
Well,
thanks.
Thank you to both of you. That was a great talk. It was very enlightening, and I really appreciate both of you taking the time to talk about it. And thank you to everybody for watching. And I look forward to seeing you on campus. This is a really surreal time to be talking about books. But the cool thing about doing this virtually is that it will continue to live on YouTube. So, you can always go back and, the things that you said that I really love that I was trying to take notes on, I can go back and watch it and write back down like the really good quotes to put in the journal, So, thank you so much to both of you. Thanks for everybody.
Yeah, let's keep independent bookstores alive.
Absolutely.
And
take
small
care
businesses that carry witchcraft goods, like Sideshow Gallery.
Uh-huh.
So, thank you.
Yeah. So stay safe. Thank you so much. Have a great